His graciousness, you figure this out. God tastes better than sin. God's graciousness tastes better than all of the earthly pleasures combined. Once you've tasted Him, you're hooked. Now, you first tasted God's goodness when you first came to faith. You came to Christ. Think back to the day or the night you said yes to Jesus on a personal level. Remember how that felt? For me, it was like a burden being lifted. I couldn't describe it. I didn't see a vision. I didn't hear a voice, but I felt like a burden of guilt was immediately lifted off. I felt so free because I tasted the graciousness of God. I remember somebody witnessing to me before I made that decision, and what he said was so good, I decided I got to use that when I share my faith later on. He said, Skip, this is what it's sort of like. It's sort of like if you have eaten hamburger helper your whole life, or canned soup or TV dinners. That's all you had. Now, I can relate to that because that sort of was what I ate growing up. My mom could cook, and she did cook, but we were very busy, and I ate a lot of that stuff. So he said, it's like you ate that all your life. Then one day, somebody invited you to a fine restaurant, and they paid for you to have steak and lobster, a gourmet meal. Now you're ruined. Now your taste buds have a gourmet taste to them. And once you've tasted that, it's just hard to go back to hamburger helper and ramen noodles and canned soup. What God has to offer you, once you taste what He has to offer, you're not going to want to go back. I think it's good for believers to regularly survey a catalog of their blessings since they've come to know Christ. I believe we forget that a lot. And because we forget that a lot, we get grouchy and grumpy, and we're going to read about that in just a little bit. Isaiah 51 says, Look to the rock from which you were hewn and the hole of the pit from which you were dug. Sometimes it's good to go back to the pit, not get in it, but look inside it and go, I came from that pit. That's the slop I used to feed on down there. I used to eat that stuff. But now, I've tasted His goodness, His graciousness. Think of how many prayers God answered for you. Think of how many times He sent you a word of encouragement or some provision just in the nick of time. You tasted that goodness and that graciousness from time to time. My wife's a great cook, but she makes this dessert. She makes it about once a year, and I'm ready for it. It's a cherry cobbler with this graham cracker butter crust. There are so many calories in that thing that when I know she's going to make it, I'll just fast all day long. I'm going to save my calories for this. Because once you taste this cobbler, you will want more. Let's let that be our thought. Once you've tasted how gracious God is, you're going to want more of that. It's going to change your reality forever. And that's the thought of the passage. Since you have indeed tasted that the Lord is gracious. So that's number one. Be mindful of what you've tasted. Remember, as you get into this meal, what the appetizer was like. And you went, oh man, that's good. Which takes us to the second step. Be careful. Be careful to avoid junk food. Now I take it back to verse 1. Laying aside all malice, all deceit, all hypocrisy, envy, and slander or evil speaking. Now this is the junk food that comes to the table. These are the things that will ruin your appetite. They'll spoil your appetite. There are 5 areas of junk food that are mentioned. You want to push them aside. I'm going to tell you a true story. It's going to gross you out, and I'm intending to do that. But it's a true story. I was at a restaurant here in Albuquerque. I ordered a meal. Salad came first. I will not tell you what restaurant. A long time ago. Doesn't matter. I don't even think they're in business. And as I tell you why, you'll understand. I had just flown back from India. So for 2-3 weeks, I survived all the meals in India. Now I come back to America. It's safe here, right? To sit down at a restaurant and eat. It's safe. So I dig in, and I have a few bites of lettuce in my salad. And as I do, my teeth stop on something hard and large. So that's odd for salad. I pull it out of my mouth, and I look at it, and I show it to my wife, and I said, is that what I think it is? And she looks at it and says, yep, that's a fingernail, all right. Pretty large one, too. It was a woman's fingernail. And I mean the fingernail. And a lot of thoughts went through my mind at that point, but the most important thought for our purpose is simply that I lost my appetite. I didn't want to eat anymore. I was sort of done with the meal after that bite of fingernail. So here's what I want you. It is disgusting, I know. That's exactly what I said. But I want you to look at these 5 things like fingernails. They're so nasty to you that you'll want to spit them out. You'll lose your appetite if you eat any more. Now, these are relational sins. These deal with people. It's interesting here that he includes these things. Peter would say, here's some things that come to the table that are so bad